Hey guys, how are you today? Wanted to review a comic book today. For a while now, I have been keeping up with the events of, I guess, what's called Comicsgate. And it's Ethan Van Sciver, the creator of Cyber Frog. It's Doug TenNapel, the creator of Earthworm Jim. And a lot of other creative artists, John Malin, and a lot of different guys. Now, I'm not a comics aficionado. I collected comics in the early 2000s, and I got out because they were just getting a little too pricey. Got into the $4 and $5 book range, and we're getting really less books. It was like 22 pages or something at one point. I don't know what it is now. But I've kind of been tracking with these guys on YouTube, not quite a year, close to a year. And what I am learning is that I guess Marvel, especially a little bit with DC, a lot of politics being inserted into comics, social, God, what words am I looking for? Identity politics, gender politics, and I've got really, no problem with the insertion of more female characters, more diverse culture, racial characters. But I agree with the premise of Comicsgate is, none of that is offensive. What has to happen, though, is stories have to be good. Stories have to be good. There have to be creative. And you honor time-honored, time-beloved characters who have been around, 40 and 50 years, kind of like the video, that I made about Luke Skywalker. People predominantly didn't like Last Jedi because of the treatment of Luke Skywalker, because he's a 40-year sci-fi hero icon, and the direction they took with him was not heroic, it was not hopeful, it was not inspiring, and that's what we wanted to see. That's what fans like myself, who am in my mid-40s, grew up with Luke, and we wanted that to continue. I think Ethan made a great video on Superman a little while back, about how we don't want a dark, gritty, angsty Superman who was, his upbringing was lesser than the noble Ma and Pa Kent that we've always known. We want our hopeful Superman. We want our Superman who always does what's right, who inspires hope in all of us. And so I get it. I get the overall thing. I don't want to talk overly political, because the politics is not the scene, it's the treatment of characters. And so this group, Comicsgate, sort of assembled a lot of creators because they were ousted from mainstream comics for being Republican or being conservative, which is just absolutely absurd because they are very talented people. And started kind of up this Comicsgate thing where they are creating new products, new comic books for fans to read without the insertion of political agendas, social and gender ideologies and things like that. And it's pretty clear that's kind of what did happen to Star Wars. Love Rose, love Finn, love Rey, love the insertion of diversity, love the insertion of females. That would have been fine. What I don't love is that they weren't well written. There's no real hero's journey for Rey that worked, that helped you resonate with the character and feel for the character. Rose was not written well. Finn was not written well. I could go on and on about Star Wars, but it's like the priority was, let's make sure we have more gender and racially diverse characters. And the story took a hit, which should not have happened when anybody's being creative. If you're a director, if you're a writer, you ought to be able to write those things well and direct them well, and it hasn't been. Not in my opinion, it hasn't been. So anyway, I like the idea of a bunch of guys getting together and saying that all of that, we're leaving all that nonsense behind, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to bring back the joy of comics by making them creative and fun and about superheroes and about hope and everything. And so I signed up for several Indiegogos. I think I'm backing maybe 16 Indiegogos right now. One of them is by a young man named Nasser Rabadi, and I got my first copy of his comic, Stardust. That's his signature there. And I was really excited to get it. I was like, all right, first Comicsgate comic out of the gate, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and I guess that's appropriate. So Stardust, I read Stardust, and I don't know, it was a little bit morbid. I liked it. I liked the art. I just liked that it was new. And what I really like about Comicsgate is instead of this ongoing continuity where you get these floppy comics, these cat spankers, if you will, that are, you know, less story, and they're connected to a bigger story, you know, and they're $4 or $5 a book. And just, I always, even as a kid, I hated that, you know, there was Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man and Peter Parker Spider-Man and Web of Spider-Man and Spider-Man Team Up and all that. And once they started connecting them, and this one connected to this one, it got real frustrating as a kid with limited income to keep up with a storyline. So I was in and out of comics for years because of that. Love the trade paperback, love the graphic novel. Something that gives you more body for your money, for what you're paying for. So I love this new approach of Comicsgate. I think Van Sciver put it like this way: I'm doing, you know, 4 parts to a movie or 4 movies or something like that. They're events. So you get a 48-page Cyberfrog comic. I think the first one is Blood Honey. The next one is Wrecked Planet. And, you know, you're going to get those inside of a year. So you're getting a couple of graphic novels a year from most of these guys. And you're getting more story, and it's not convoluted. You don't have to buy, you know, 4 or 5 other books to know what's going on. You get all your story in that book, and it's kind of building up to an event. So I like this approach. It's more affordable. It gives you more to look forward to, and you know that the comics are being handled by creative people in the industry who are not trying to force any kind of agenda down your throat. They just want you to have fun with it. They are for the customer. If you watch Comicsgate Keep Up, they want the customer to be pleased. They listen to the customer. And I love that too, because we do now live in a culture where it seems like, at least in parts of the entertainment industry, and the comic book industry, and the movie industry, it's kind of like, this is what we're offering. If you don't like it, don't buy it. And then movies tank and comics tank and nobody seems to care and fans get insulted online. It's nuts. It's like the whole world's gone nuts. So I love this idea that these guys are you know, putting out there. We're for the customer. We want you to buy our product. We want you to like our product. And so, you know, here they go. And we're not going to like everything. You know, every book that Comicsgate puts out is not going to be a win with me. It might be a win with somebody else, and that's fine. And I kind of got mixed feelings about Stardust. It's about an alien. And they crash land on Earth, and the humans are, you know, come after them and kill all of them but one. He kind of learns their ways over years, and he decides he, you know, wants to get revenge for the death of his people. Anyway, it's a lot of spoilers and everything, but it's a little bit morbid for my taste. And there's several little short stories in the back as well. But I did like the art. You know, here's just a shot of some of the art in the book. I really liked the design of the alien. It had kind of a swamp thing versus man thing kind of feel to it. It was really creepy and a little bit disturbing with some of the things that happened in the book. But I didn't like it, but I did like it. It was new, it was fresh. It definitely didn't have any politics in it that I could see. And it was just kind of fun to read it and get a different story. So that's Stardust. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I did want to say that overall, I enjoyed the book, and here's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the old Epic magazines. I don't know if you remember Epic magazine by Marvel back in the early 80s. There's an Epic right there, and here's an Epic book. And I don't know, man, these were amazing sci-fi, fantasy-filled stories, just all kinds of creative stories by all kinds of creative artists. And some of them had continuing storylines that would continue to the next epic. That looks a little bit like a Robert E. Howard Conan there. Some of them would just be one contained story inside the issue. It was an amazing book, just full of sci-fi and fantasy. And Nasser's book, Stardust, reminded me, and that's what I like most about it, I guess. Look at that cover. I love that cover. It's just such good art, such good creativity, and that's I think what the Comicsgate guys are telling us. You know, when you're trying to push politics of any sort, and that becomes your focus, you're losing your creativity. You're not trying to tell a story as hard as you are trying to send a message, and the message is in the story. Like Superman, the message of nobility and truth and justice and the American way and being better than average, that's all inside of Superman. So if you tell a good Superman story, you're getting that message across just by doing that. And so I think a lot of that's been lost. You know, if I'm a Republican and I'm a conservative Christian, and I am a Christian, I'm an evangelical Christian, which is one of the reasons I really like a lot of things Doug TenNapel has to share. If I'm that, and I'm a creator of fiction, and my primary goal is to push my Christian message through my fiction, then my story is going to take a hit a little bit. I need to tell a great, creative, inventive, colorful, well written, well illustrated story. And if there's a Christian message to be inserted in there, that's wonderful. But that doesn't need to drive the cart, okay? So anyway, what I was trying to say, I think about the old He-Man show, the old He-Man cartoon. I got a bunch of He-Man toys right here behind me. Go grab him. On He-Man, you'd get that great cartoon, growing up, you'd come home from school in the afternoon, you'd get a He-Man cartoon. At the end, they would have a moral message. The moral message was in the story, but the moral message didn't drive the story. The story was full of Skeletor and creatures and aliens and adventure and, corny one-liners and all the things that He-Man was, and they managed to work a good message in there. And so I just think there's a better way to do what mainstream comics are trying to do, and I think these Comicsgate guys are onto it. And Nasser Rabadi's book, although it, it was a little dark, reminded me of the Epic books. Good art, creative storytelling. You got some bonus stuff in the back, and that was always the case with Epic. You got additional stories. And this is more or less a horror comic, I guess, and so I shouldn't have been so surprised. Look at that bad boy. Ooh, yeah, right? So those were kind of cool, especially Halloween's coming up. So, I'm consider this one of my Halloween comics. But anyway, I'd like to say great job to Nasser. Thank you for getting the books out so fast. Thank you for signing the book. I'm going to take good care of this. I'm going to take good care of all my Comicsgate comics. And I'm looking forward to what's coming next. Cyberfrog's coming, and Bigfoot Bill is coming, and Brand is coming, and Brutus is coming, and Black and White is coming, and Ravage Kill All Men is coming. So I'm excited about all that. Big supporter of Comicsgate. I believe in what those guys are doing, and I believe we're in for some really fun books coming up. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.